Welcome back to another Five Guys podcast. We're really glad you're here. Today, we're diving into how family oriented television shows portray identity in multicultural contexts, especially how people act differently in family spaces versus peer spaces.
Yeah, for guiding our conversation, we are asking how do family TV shows portray identity performance across its family and peer spaces in multicultural contexts.
And honestly, this is more relevant than it sounds. Because TV doesn't just entertain us, it shapes how we think about culture, family, identity, and what normal looks like.
Exactly, especially family shows because they present cultural tension in ways that feel funny or relatable, but they're still teaching us something.
So before we get into specific shows, maybe we can start a bit more personal. Why don't we each share how family TV shows shape our values growing up? I believe each of us watched so many family TV shows while growing up. Right now, we can talk about how early experience about TV shows influence our perspectives.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like it influences you without even realizing it.
Yeah, exactly. For me, when I think about family TV shows, I realize they shaped how I imagine family relationships before I even studied intercultural communication.
Yeah, it feels like setting expectations for how a family relationship should look like.
Yeah, growing up, I watched a lot of shows where families were really open, parents and kids would argue directly, joke around, and then solve everything by the end of the episode.
Right, everything gets resolved like so quickly.
Exactly. So I started associating a healthy family with being emotionally open and expressive. But when I compare that to my own experience growing up in a Chinese family, it's actually very different.
What kind of way?
In my family, care is not always expressed in direct words. Love may show up more through responsibility, reminders, concern, sacrifice, or even expectations about doing well in school and making good decisions. So when I was younger, I sometimes felt that the family I saw on TV were warmer and more communicative than my own.
I can see how that comparison happens.
But now I think the difference was not about one family caring more than another. It was different cultural styles of expressing care.
Yeah, it kind of giving a standard.
Exactly. And later I realized that TV often presents one communication style as normal, even though it's just culturally specific. Like in American shows, openness and humor are seen as intimacy, but families can be just as close, even with more indirect communication. So for me, family TV both reflects values and creates them. That's why shows like Modern Family matter. They shape how we understand family and cultural difference.
Yeah, I really relate to that. I'm also from China and now studying in the US. I grew up watching both Chinese and international shows like Modern Family and A Fresh of the Boat. Sometimes I feel like two different perspectives of my family are fighting with each other in my mind. So before I stepped into college, I didn't fully understand why my parents had such a hard time expressing their love to me directly. However, after I go to the college, I encounter so many people from different culture background. I talk to them and I gradually know there's more than one way to express love in a relationship. So I hope both perspectives and they don't contradict each other anymore.
So you kind of had both perspectives?
Yes, um, I I also watch a lot of Chinese family dramas, and I mentioned I started notice some patterns. I found out that media strengthens some of the identity and images. What they sent to the public included outdated thoughts, and they were good at saying the same thing again and again. For example, there's often this tiger mom image showing they are very strict moms and a stressful environment.
Yeah, the stereotype shows up a lot.
Yes, what I want to say is that this is reflects the part of the reality of the Chinese families, but it's also a stereotype. I think the idea of the tiger mom is outdated and inaccurate in the defining the role of the Chinese mothers today. Many Chinese families experience a wide range of issues like generational gaps and implicit ways of expressing love.
So would you say like it's kind of exaggerated?
Yes, I study the medias. I feel like the mass media is often a double-edged sword. It introduces the local culture to a global audience, but at the same time, it can also reinforce the stereotypes about nation. This also made me think about American TV shows. Do they also create stereotypes when portraying harmonies or non-harmonious families?
Yeah, I definitely think they do. For me, I didn't watch family shows as a kid. It was more during middle school and high school, but I watched Korean dramas and American shows like The Fosters.
That's a good example.
Yeah. Yeah, and I noticed how differently they showed family dynamics. Like in Asian shows, parents often show love by bringing cut fruit to their kids.
Yeah, I feel related to this.
Really? See, I didn't know that, but seeing it so often made me think of it as a common trait among Asian parents. So media can reinforce stereotypes even when it's trying to represent culture. And to answer your question, I think American shows definitely create stereotypes too. For example, Latinos are often portrayed as lower class, undocumented, or connected to crime.
Yeah, that comes up a lot at some point.
Yeah, and it's not accurate for most people, but those themes repeat. Like Latina women are often sexualized, Latina men are portrayed as very masculine, and there's this idea that Latinos are more extroverted. At the same time, white families are portrayed as more like open, where parents act more like friends. So these shows really made me reflect on my own family, including extended family.
Okay, I think it's the perfect time to start talking about some specific shows. Has anyone here watched Modern Family?
I haven't watched it fully, but I've seen some clips on TikTok. But I think like I get the general idea.
Yeah, I've seen it because I think this more is the diverse family of everything.
Perfect. Reason Modern Family is important because it introduced a version of family that looked more diverse than what a lot of mainstream family sitcoms showed before. Instead of presenting only one traditional family structure, the show brought together different kinds of relationships and backgrounds. It included generational differences, same sex parents, interracial and intercultural relationships, and family members with very different personalities and values. Because of that, the show helped make diversity more visible in a mainstream and accessible way.
Even from what I've seen on TikTok, like the show often turns family tension, miscommunication, and cultural misunderstanding into humor. When people say the wrong thing, make assumptions, or fail to understand each other, the audience is usually invited to laugh first. That's like one of the main reasons the show became so popular because it makes conflict feel familiar, light, and manageable.
I agree. For instance, many of the misunderstanding in the show came from differences in age, family role, culture, or expectation. Some characters are more traditional, while others are more flexible or modern. Some conversations are awkward because people use the wrong words or make assumptions about each other. But instead of letting those moments become too heavy, the show usually softens them with comedy. By the end, there's often some kind of emotional resolutions that reminds the audience this is the family still cares about one another.
Yeah, I remember, for example, in one of the videos, Jay, as the father figure in the family, struggles to show affection to his son Mitchell. He admits that he has never kissed his son because he finds it uncomfortable, cringy, and even embarrassing. This reflects the more traditional and emotionally reserved way he was raised. However, Gloria, Jay's wife, plays an important role in challenging this affection or this mindset. She encourages and supports Jay to express his love more openly, reminding him that showing affection is not something to be ashamed of. With her encouragement, Jay begins to realize expressing love does not weaken his identity but actually strengthens his relationship with his son.
Were Jay and Gloria from different cultures?
Yes, Gloria is Latino and Jay is American.
Oh, okay, thanks. I feel like this moment is meaningful because it highlights how different cultural backgrounds and personal experiences can shape the way people express emotions and how those patterns can change over time. I think this is kind of similar to The Fosters. Has anyone else watched it before?
No.
Me neither.
Oh, okay, okay. Basically, it's about a non-traditional multicultural family led by two moms, Steph and Lena, who are raising a mix of biological, adopted, and foster children. The show focuses on their everyday lives, but also dives into deeper topics like identity, belonging, social issues, and family dynamics. It touches on some important aspects, like how people from different cultural and personal backgrounds communicate differently, even within the same family. For example, Steph is usually more direct and action oriented, and especially because of her role as a police officer, while Lena it tends to be more reflective and encourages like open conversations, also because she is influenced by her background as a school principal.
That's a great example of how there isn't one right way to communicate. It's about understanding each other's styles and adjusting.
Yeah, I think it's also important that you can see how those differences sometimes create tension, but also how they learn to adapt to each other's styles.
Yeah, I agree. Another like big theme is identity and belonging, especially through characters like Mariana, one of the adopted children. She never knew who her mom was until high school, so she never felt connected to her Latina heritage or culture, especially since Lena is black and Steph is white. So she navigates her identity in different environments such as school, friendships, and relationships. There are moments where she experiences like stereotypes or feels pressure to fit into certain expectations, like the kind of music she should like or the way to dress, which reflects how intercultural communication is also shaped by external perceptions and biases. The show makes it clear that communication is not just about what it's said, but also about how people are interpreted based on their cultural background.
And the adoption and the foster care aspect adds another layer, right?
Yeah, characters like Callie and Jude, like the foster kids, come from very different and sometimes traumatic backgrounds, which affect their sense of trust and authority. This often creates misunderstandings, but also opportunities for growth. And this can be compared to Mariana, who, although adopted, has received like consistent love and support from both Steph and Lena throughout her life. In contrast, Callie and Jude initially appear more distant as they struggle to trust others after being mistreated in their previous foster homes.
So the Fosters really highlights that intercultural communication isn't just about ethnicity or culture. It's about experiences, identities, perspectives, and learning empathy, active listening, and understanding others.
Yeah, and these shows make it clear that family life and communication are complex, and there's no single normal.
Yeah, this connects back to what we said before that TV doesn't just entertain, it also teaches viewers about values, identity, and culture.
Exactly, I agree. That's why Modern Family and The Fosters are so valuable. They're funny, relatable, but they also show us how families navigate differences.
You know, thinking about all of this, it's interesting how much people change depending on who they're with. Like family, friends, peers, it really shapes how we act and express ourselves. This is such an important part of identity.
Yeah, identity, I think, is not fixed or unchanging, but rather expressed and interpreted differently depending on the context.
Yeah, when we watch family sitcoms such as Modern Family, we notice that the characters do not always present their identities in the same way in different settings. In family settings, for instance, their behavior may align with age, gender, or family role based expectations. However, in peer settings, the same characters may express themselves more freedoms, behave more casually, or present themselves differently. Therefore, identity is not static, it shifts in the responses to changes in the social environment and the people around us.
And I think that's why popular culture, which we talked about in class, is also powerful too. You watch characters in different settings and it shows how context affects behavior. It gives you a sense of what's typical in one environment, but also what's possible in another.
Yeah, exactly. Even subtle things like how someone shows care or handles conflict can stick with you. It shapes what you think closeness should look like, sometimes without even realizing it.
Yeah, I agree to that. I think this is important because family TV programs are not just for entertainment. They also show audience examples of ideal families and the diversity and give them a sense of belonging.
And it's not just about being open or expressive, right? It's about learning that there are multiple ways to communicate care, set boundaries, or resolve misunderstandings. Different families do it differently, and that's okay.
Right, TV highlights patterns, not rules. It teaches lessons about identity and culture indirectly, showing that no one way is kind of defined as the right way.
Yeah, and it also makes you reflect on your own family dynamics, how you express yourself, how others expect you to behave, and what parts of that you might carry into other spaces.
Exactly. It's subtle, but TV helps us notice the differences in social expectations across contexts. Home versus peers, or tradition versus modern approaches.
Also, what makes family shows more than just entertainment? They give us a lens to think about identity, popular culture, and communication. While we are laughing, also we get invested in the story.
Yeah, that's so true. And it makes you realize that flexibility in identity is normal. Who you are can shift depending on context, and that's part of growing up and interacting with different people.
Definitely. As we wrap up this podcast, I think one of my biggest takeaway is that overall identity is not fixed, but rather shaped by context, relationships, and different cultural expectations. What we see in these family television shows reflects the fluidity. It's very powerful.
Yes, I totally agree. Those show how identity performance changes depending on the space that someone is in. This could be a family space or peer space. And someone's home, people might follow their own culture norms, traditions, and expectations. In peer settings, people can express themselves more freely.
Yeah, and also what I found interesting is that these differences aren't wrong. They are just different ways that people navigate their identity. In shows like Modern Family, Fresh Off the Boat, and The Fosters, it shows that there is no correct way to be a family.
Yep, this is what connects. This is what connects to what I have learned in our classes. The idea of global village sticks out to me the most. How media allows us to see and understand culture that are not our own. This is this is the case even if it's stereotypes.
As audience, we need to think very critically about the things we are watching. When you think if these portraits are totally correct or if they are reinforcing stereotypes.
Yeah, another concept would be ethic versus ethic perspectives. It allows us to understand culture from the inside compared to viewing it from the outside. Most of these shows try to balance both, but sometimes they lean more towards what is easiest for the audience to understand.
I totally agree. I was also looking at nonverbal behavior, how parents show care towards their children, either through the words, actions, or small gestures. This plays a huge role in how we interpret a relationship on the screen.
Yeah, overall, all of these shows act as both a mirror and a lens. They try to reflect many realities, but they also show how we think about culture.
Ultimately, to wrap up our conversation today, family TV shows are not just for entertainment, they act as a powerful tool that can influence how we understand ourselves and other cultures.
And if we are more of this, we can become better in communication and become more aware of this other cultures.
And that sums up our podcast for today. Thank you all for listening to our
Thank you
podcast.
so much. Thank you.
We
See you in the
hope-
next episode.
We hope our conversation gives you a new perspective.
Yes, thank